Hi guys, it's Ange. So today we're going over chapter 5 to 7 of Wuthering Heights. After a course of time, Mr. Earnshaw's health began to fail, and once he was confined, he begins to grow grievously irritable, and nothing vexed him more than suspected slights on his authority. It nearly threw him into fits of rage. This was especially remarked upon if anyone tried to impose upon his favorite. He was under the notion that because he liked Heathcliff, that everyone hated him and wanted to do him an ill turn. It was a disadvantage to the lad, for the kinder among us did not wish to fret the master, so we humored him, and that nourishment was rich treatment for the child's pride. Hindley's scorn, while his father was near, roused the old man to a fury. The master would seize his stick to strike Hindley, and shook with rage when he couldn't. And at last, Mr. Earnshaw hires a curate, and the curate made his living teaching the little Lintons and Earnshaws. The curate also did a little bit of farming on land by himself. He advised Mr. Earnshaw that the young man should be sent to college, although the old man thought he would not do well there, but he did hope that there would finally be some peace in his home. It hurt everyone to think the old man should be made uncomfortable by his own good deeds, but everyone thinks that his disease was because of all the stress in the home. They believe they would have got on very well if it was not for Miss Cathy and Joseph. Joseph's incessant sermons got increasingly more and had an effect on the master, and the more feeble he became, the more the sermons had an effect on him. He was relentless in worrying the master about his soul's concern, and about ruling the children rigidly. He would say Hindley was a reprobate, and he would run a long string of tales against Heathcliff and Catherine, always flattering Earnshaw's weakness and heaping the biggest blame to the latter. Certainly, she was always a precocious child, and was almost constantly up to mischief. But her spirits were always high, singing, laughing, and plaguing anyone who would not do the same. A wild child she was, but she was a bonny girl, the sweetest smile, and the lightest foot in the parish. I believe she never meant any harm. She was much too fond of Heathcliff, and the biggest punishment that they could invent for her would be to keep them apart. The master didn't really understand the children's play, and Catherine really had no idea why her father would be cross with her, and more impatient as he was ailing. She never seemed to be more happy than when everyone was scolding her at once. "Nay, Cathy," the old man would say, "I cannot love thee. Thou art worse than thy brother. Go say your prayers and ask God's pardon." At first this made her cry, but then she was repulsed by his behavior in the beginning, and eventually she was hardened by this. But the hour came one October evening, and the old man passed away in his chair by the fireside. Heathcliff and Cathy sat by his side as he slowly passed away, and the master was stroking Cathy's hair and said to her, Why can you not always be a good lass?" And she laughed, and turned to him and said, "Why can you not always be a good man?" When she saw him vexed, she turned and kissed his hand, and she sang him to sleep. When the servants realized the master had passed, they tried to usher the children to bed, but Kathy wanted a hug and a kiss, wanted to hug and kiss her father before bed, and when she wrapped her arms around his neck, she realized that he had died, and she screams a guttural scream, and both her and Heathcliff began to cry. As I went to leave for a doctor and a parson's, I came home to check on the children, who were still awake past midnight, sweetly talking and comforting each other. I sat by the door, and I listened, and I cried. Chapter 6. Mr. Hindley comes home for the funeral, but what shocked everyone the most was that he brought a wife with him. What she was and where she was from, he never informed them. She had neither money nor name. She was not the one that disturbed the house, and every threshold she crossed seemed to delight her. The only thing that seemed to disturb her was seeing all the mourners. She admitted that she was afraid of dying, and she didn't know why. She was afraid on the stairs, and she also had a troublesome cough, but I had no idea what these symptoms could mean. I had an impulse to sympathize with her, but Mr. Lockwood, we do not take to foreigners here, unless they take to us first. The day Hindley arrives home, he changes so much in the 3 years, and then declares that the maid and Joseph must stay in the back kitchen and leave the house for him. His wife expressed pleasure at having a sister. However, her affection tires very soon. Revenge grows for Heathcliff, and he is soon pushed out of the house. He is told to start working on the farm. Heathcliff bore his degradation pretty well at first. They would never even had seen Hindley if it wasn't for the curate or Joseph reprimanding him to order Heathcliff a flogging. I cried every day when I saw their naughty little plans of revenge grow reckless. One Sunday evening, they were banished from the sitting room for making noise, and when I tried to call them for supper, I could not find them anywhere. I searched the house from top to bottom, and eventually Hindley told us to bolt the doors, and no one was to let them in that night. Eventually, I see a light come up the drive, and it was Heathcliff, announcing that Catherine was at Thrushcross Grange. And I say, and I would have stayed there also, but they did not have the manners to let me in. Heathcliff continues to tells really how nice Thrushcross Grange is, and how happy the children are. Nellie says it's probably because the children are much better behaved there. Heathcliff continues to go on about how beautiful Thrushcross Grange is. He says old Mr. and Mrs. Linton were not there, and Edgar and his sister had the room entirely to themselves. Heathcliff goes on to talk about the children. He says they must be idiots arguing and fighting for no reason when they should be having the time of their lives with their parents not around. When the Linton children hear Catherine and Heathcliff laughing at them, they are terrified and they call for their parents to come immediately. And as Heathcliff and Cathy were running away, a bulldog caught Cathy by the ankle, and the servants brought her inside. They saw Heathcliff and believed him to be a robber because he looked like someone who had been there before. They gave Heathcliff a lantern and told him to inform Mr. Earnshaw. But he says he stayed and he watched from the window for a while, and Catherine was being cared for and she seemed okay. When Earnshaw found out about this, he was furious. But this time, he did not beat Heathcliff, but he did warn him if he ever spoke to his sister again, he would be dismissed. So that was chapter 5 to 7 of Wuthering Heights. But who is the writer? Well, the writer is Emily Bronte, and she is one of the 3 Bronte sisters. Wuthering Heights was Emily Bronte's only novel, although she was a poet. Emily was also a teacher at Law Hill School in Halifax, beginning in September 1838. When she was 20, her health was always fragile, and soon, under the stress of the 17-hour workday, she returned home. Thereafter, she remained at home doing most of the cooking, ironing, and cleaning at Haworth. She taught herself German out of books, and she practiced the piano. In 1842, Emily accompanied Charlotte to Brussels in Belgium, where they attended the Girls' Academy, run by Constantine Hagar, in the hopes of perfecting their French and German before opening their own school. You see, it was always a dream for all of the sisters, and I believe including their brother, but that changed at the end. It was their dream that they would all work and save money, and they would open their own schoolhouse. Their father was an amazingly smart teacher, and he homeschooled all of his children. I think they all went to school for a short time, some of them longer than others. Emily, I believe she had agoraphobia, but that's just my opinion. And they just loved being together, and they really just wanted to teach and teach the way their father had taught them. So, as they're in Brussels, Emily started to become very uncomfortable, and she refused to adopt the Belgian fashions, saying, "I wish to be as God made me," which rendered her something as an outcast. 9 of Emily's French essays survive from the period, and Hagar seems to have been impressed with the strength of Emily's character, writing that she should have been a man, a great navigator. Her powerful reason would have deduced her new spheres of discovery from the knowledge of the old, and her strong, imperious will would never have been daunted by opposition or difficulty. Never have given way, but with life. She had a head for logic and a capability of argument unusual in a man, and rarer indeed in a woman. Impairing this gift was her stubborn tenacity of will, which rendered her obtuse to all reasoning, where her own wishes or her own sense of right was concerned. So the 2 sisters were committed to their studies, and by the end of the term, they had become